Hello, welcome once again to our videos that we're doing for whatever we're doing it for.
Our series on the minor prophets.
That's right.
There we go.
Anyway, yeah, this is going to be the final video.
The last one.
The last one of the series. We started with doing this series just in our Sunday gatherings, and then we've moved it to this format. And we've covered almost all of the minor prophets except Zechariah. So we just encourage you to read that one for yourself. And it consists of dreams that Zechariah shares. It would have been happening pretty much alongside Haggai, so you can kind of read those together, and would eventually inspire the Israelites to return when they returned after the exile to rebuild the temple. And even though we're not going to take any more time on Zechariah itself, I just want to point out the point of these dreams was really ultimately pointing them to the greater reality of the temple, which ultimately is Jesus.
Jesus, yeah.
All right. So, one of the important, we've mentioned this many times, the important note when it comes to the minor prophets is they're not called minor.
Because they're lesser.
Because they're lack importance. It's all about length. And Obadiah, who we're going to talk about today, is the absolute shortest one of them all.
Okay.
One chapter, 21 verses. You can probably read it in about 2-ish minutes. However, there is an importance in this message, even though it is really brief. Okay, so Obadiah, he's unlike many other prophets, and he's actually talking to the nation of Edom. We do have a few prophets that don't speak to Israel itself, and he is one of them. It is kind of for Israel, and that there's kind of a message of justice in here, but it's not directed at them.
Okay.
It is really about, it's about speaking about justice as a result of the actions of Edom, and it does speak to hope and restoration for Israel in the midst of this. And it's really just, and there's a lot of, in this, there's some where Obadiah kind of reiterates some of the promise for the people of Israel. But it really is directed at Edom.
So this really sets up the reason that Obadiah is bringing. It's, again, as you said, about the actions that Edom took in response to Israel being taken captive into Babylon.
Yeah, it's believed that it would have been.
What is it that caused this prophecy to come about?
Well, we'll get into that in a minute. What I want to say is just that maybe a little more about Obadiah, because where they are, they're a neighboring country or nation. Edom is, yes, sort of, on the other side of the Dead Sea. And so when Babylon does come to conquer Israel, Edom kind of sees an opportunity. They see an opportunity essentially to, hey, we can capitalize on this, and they do that, and they basically they pillage some of the cities. They would kill some of the survivors, and anyone who was kind of hiding, they would rat them out to Babylon. Say, hey, there's some people over here too. Sure. So and I'm pretty sure there was probably compensation involved in all.
Oh,
of that.
so like they were mercenaries or whatever.
Yeah, I'm sure that there it wasn't just sort of like doing that. Like, there's some sort of compensation or whatever that might be.
Yeah. So just to give some context here, the nation of Edom descended from Esau, who was a brother to Jacob, who the nation of Israel was descended from. And of course, we know that Jacob's family was chosen to be the one that was going to carry on the nation of Israel. And we get his 12 sons become the 12 founding fathers of the 12 tribes. So I think even though Esau himself didn't take any particular offense at that, I think over the years there might have been some jealousy, maybe a little bit towards, because really they're almost related, like brothers. And so
Obadiah is going to bring that up.
Yeah, they're going to kick them while they're down, kind of thing, sort of as a revenge thing. And I think that is really maybe the motivation there.
We're going to see that. Absolutely. I think there's something in that. So so all of that does play an important part in Obadiah's warning. And so where we start off, one of the things that that Obadiah is going to call out is their nation's pride.
Okay.
And verse 3, he said, you have been deceived by your own pride because you live in rock fortresses and make your homes high in the mountains. And basically they say, who can ever reach us way up here, you ask boastfully.
And this is a strategic thing in ancient warfare. It comes with the idea of who has the higher ground has the advantage.
Yeah, well, and they're in the mountains, so there's just there's natural rock defenses.
Yeah.
They're basically the geographic location adds to their fortification, and ultimately they feel safe as a result.
Yeah, and maybe a little cocky because of that.
Absolutely, because as you said, like that adds the high ground. It's sort of like, hey, we're always in the high ground. Also, it said that they are on a major trade route, so they're also enjoying a certain amount of wealth as a result of that.
Yeah.
So they take pride in their security, not and not a pride that of a genuinely looking at a job well done or a justifiable look at their achievements and strength. There's nothing wrong with that.
Self-esteem. It's actual pride.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically this, and I love it. I can't remember where I found it. Is a pride that inflates a position to a position of superiority.
Yeah, well put. Yeah.
It's a kind of pride that births things like arrogance and narcissism. It leads to responses of self-serving and inflated self-interest as opposed to things like justice and righteousness, which, as we go through these minor prophets, it's very clear justice and righteousness is a big deal to God.
Yep.
So they kind of see themselves as untouchable, and even as they watch the juggernaut that is Babylon conquer Israel, they just like, hey, we're okay where we are. They can't touch us, and basically the idea is God is saying that those securities eventually are going to let them down. Mm-hmm. And a message even to us could be we need to watch that unhealthy pride, because that might be something that eventually will let us down as well.
Sure.
And so then we move into Edom's actions, right? Pride's the issue, and as a result of that pride and that look of superior position, it basically, as we kind of said before, they look to capitalize on the situation. So at first they said Edom's response was to do nothing. Mm-hmm. So they're just kind of watching it happen. So they're not coming to anyone's defense or anything like that. Nothing at all.
We got to remember, these are almost related peoples. So
very much so.
So you might have and I think even in the past they were allies. So in this case, not coming to their defense is
they definitely have had a tension-filled past.
Falling out, yes.
Over time. Like, it's never been really a good thing, but there is some thought, and again, Obadiah does touch on it, being like, but when push comes to shove, like, hey, you've got connections here. Why did you do anything? Anyway, so they first do nothing. Eventually, they decided that, again, they're going to plunder cities in Israel. They're kind of coming in after the fact and like, hey, well, everyone's in disarray. We can capitalize on the fact that walls are weak and defenses are weak. They killed those trying to escape. They captured survivors and handed them over to Babylon. You see all that in verse 13 and 14. Yeah. So once again, what we see here is really important. Is it's an exploitation of the vulnerable.
That's really kicking your brother while he's down.
Absolutely. Yeah. They saw those moments. They saw they did nothing at first, and they say, hey, you know what? What if we could go to that city? That city doesn't have any fortifications anymore. We can go in there and find whatever we want, all the loot, all the wealth, whatever it might be. Yeah. We can find it. We can take that for ourselves. Again, really important. Common theme throughout the prophets, God's not a fan of people exploiting the vulnerable.
Totally not.
In addition to this, what's highlighted again is what we've been talking about.
They are related.
They're related. They have ancestry through Abraham. Mm-hmm. So you do have Jacob and Esau coming from Isaac. And the brothers had a relationship that was tension-filled. Mm-hmm. And that just seems to have carried on through their ancestry. So it's not just a neighboring nation, so really important. It's not just a random enemy. There's someone with, again, deep history, deep connections. And you think that would be a place or a launching point for empathy. you'd think to say, yeah, we don't always get along, but we share this ancestry. You'd think that would be like, oh, I can't believe what's happening to these people right now. Like, this is terrible. This is awful. But they didn't.
Even at a minimum, you might think the enemy of my enemy, right? It's like
something like that. Or the idea, hey, if we got together or something like that. I mean, Babylon's a big deal.
Yeah.
But instead they seem to relish in it and actually capitalize on the situation. And again, this seems to be a theme that goes on. I mean, God's frustrated with how Israel would capitalize on their very own people where there's, again, all related and somehow, so even closer
relations.
We've talked
about that, where the leaders were corrupt and were taking advantage of the poor. Yeah.
And so he's angry that Edom is doing this. And instead of seeing the people of Israel through the connection or where they converge, they saw nothing but selfish opportunity. And I think there's a good lesson what we can learn here is that when we kind of disassociate from others, so we focus on where there are tensions, and there might be there where we diverge, and those things, I don't want to knock that those things can't be important.
Yep.
But when we do focus on those, it can affect how we see each other and ultimately how we might treat others.
Yeah, so we're going to justify our actions on the tension.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when we see someone we have tension, we're more likely to gloat as they face difficulties, or possibly see opportunities to exploit as they face difficulties.
So it's one thing to trash talk somebody or think bad about them. It's another whole thing to take action in that.
Yeah, and it absolutely can affect her. And I think this is really important to see that it can affect how we see it. Or even our, like I want to go back to like before they started to do something, did anything as far as the plundering goes, it also led them to inaction. So even if it doesn't lead us to any action, leading us to no action whatsoever can also not be good.
Yeah.
So the challenge is the idea that we might want to try to see others in the place where we can relate or try to find that. Our world likes to point out where we're different and where we diverge.
Oh, we sure do, don't we?
Like it's always about how the them and the us is and what makes them that, as opposed to taking a lot of time. And even though you could be with people who there are significant diverges and different viewpoints and all that, but to totally not pay any attention to where there is a lot of overlap and things like that.
Yeah, common ground, and that's typically, I think, our culture today is very polarizing that way.
Yeah.
We don't look at what we might have in common. We look at what we don't have in common, and we write off anything that we might because of that.
Well, and then when what happens when we focus on what we don't have in common or all of those things, we tend to also just attribute the worst of intentions behind it too. And I think that's where we kind of miss when we start to see somebody, and even though we might have a differing point of views on some serious things, we start to see where we converge, where we're similar. We might like, oh, okay, I disagree with you, but I start to see how you kind of got there. Instantly, it's a very black and white kind of, you're wrong because you're evil.
Yeah, and we don't give anybody the benefit of the doubt.
We don't give any of that. That's right.
You belong in that camp, you're bad.
Yep.
It's very black and white.
And it becomes the focus to the point where we can't see where we even converge. So we need to make sure that we also focus on where we converge and where we relate to others. I think as followers, we can start. This is really a broad thing, but I think it's where we can start. If we can start to see everyone, absolutely everyone, as image bearers.
Sure. Everybody's created in the image of God.
Everyone is created in the image of God. Even if that person who does not believe in God, we start to say, no, we do, and therefore that determines an amount of value. Even if, and I'm sure there's many other places, whoever it might be, we can converge and relate over.
Yeah.
Even if that is the only place, that's enough to attribute some kind of value.
Sure. It's a place to start.
It's a place to start. So it's hopefully that if we lead off on that foot, it will affect how we interact with each other. And I think I've heard this before, and I know it's kind of a broad connection, but I think it is a place to start. But I want to use this illustration just to hopefully help people understand. If you don't, if you're a hockey fan, you might cheer for different teams, even opposing teams, where there could be that rivalry, there could be tense. But what happens if, again, we can still have those teams, we can still love those teams, we can still have those things, but if we focus not on just the teams, but on our love for hockey,
sure,
doesn't mean those rivalries need to go away, but hopefully those rivalries can be even maybe more fun.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's a love for hockey.
More good-natured, yeah.
That is the point.
And I think I see
that with so
many
things.
A lot of that is happening right now. We're down to the Stanley Cup Finals, and
as we're recording this, it could be over by the time anyone sees this.
Yeah. But I've known some people who are definitely not Edmonton Oilers fans cheering for the Edmonton Oilers.
Especially if you live in Calgary like we are. And it's absolutely. And if it could be our love for hockey, again, it's not that you can't have those rivalries, not that you have those tensions, but hopefully what happens is they exist with the greater reality of a love for hockey. And again, we can move it to movies, music, like all of that sort of stuff. We can find all that. We need to find intersection.
Sure.
And here's the thing, though, is our pride, as we kind of learned through Obadiah, our pride can affect how we view others. That dangerous, toxic pride, in that it elevate ourselves at the expense of others. So if we start to elevate ourselves, we start to see ourselves greater. We start to see like all the places where we don't intersect. All the places where we see ourselves as superior or whatever it is. Again, this is not about legitimately good achievements. You can have pride in that. Good, you did a great job. You did a great job on that test. You did a great job, and you got your master's, your doctorate, whatever. You've success in whatever business you're in. All of those things. That's good to have. Good to have a healthy sense of pride. You worked hard. You had natural talents. You had great opportunities. But when we look at the achievement as an opportunity to look down on others, that affects how we see them.
Sure, and I think that's quite a common thing in the business world, where we might have opportunities and might have natural talent, but there's a propensity, I think, to step on other people on the way up the ladder, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Where we're going to win no matter what, and we don't see others as people. We see them as stepping stones to where we want to get to. And I think that's the kind of pride that we're talking about here.
Absolutely.
Because it injures other people.
There's a great song that came out just the kind of the fall of last year by Need to Breathe. And they did it with another band called Judah and the Lion. And the song is called Dreams. And the whole point of the song is basically kind of a love song to their fans. This is not to negate their talents, their time they have taken, practicing, honing their gift for songwriting, for performance, all of those things, opportunities. But the whole idea is they sing the song, "You Make Dreams Come True."
Sure.
And they're really talking to the audience with, the idea of like they have such devoted fans. And it's because of those devoted fans that buy their albums, that go to their concerts, buy their merch.
Are you one of those fans?
I am. I've seen them both live just recently. That they're looking at the fans, say, "You make dreams come true." Yeah, all the other stuff is true, but without, they could look down at the fans and just say, "Yeah, look how talented I am," or be like, "Hey, you know what? You guys keep coming out. You guys keep listening to our stuff. We can keep doing this, and we get to do this because
nobody buys their music or comes to their concerts."
Yep,
they can be the most talented people in the world.
They can be amazingly talented, absolutely. And I think that's just a great way to say it. In that sense, and it's looking well at their fan base and just how devoted they are, and just seeing that, hey, you play such an important part to this. I want to kind of, because we come to the end here, just the idea of it's so important to do this is that Jesus tells us the greatest commandments are to love God and love others, and it's a package deal. Yep. And
can't have one without the other.
Exactly. And our unhealthy pride affects both of those.
Sure. And I think that's a good place for us to kind of end this particular podcast. And I think sometimes what's needed is a little bit of self-reflection here, because lots of times we get in the habit of doing this and we don't always see it in ourselves. easy to point out in other people sometimes, but sometimes we just need to take a moment, review what we've been doing in the past and in the recent past, and look at, say, hey, you know what, I maybe didn't treat someone the way I should have, or I took advantage of an opportunity at the expense of somebody else, and that is not what God wants for his followers of Jesus. So again, there's a place for confessing that to God, but also to other people.
Yeah.
And sometimes we even need to say we're sorry and make amends. And that's all part and parcel to what Jesus taught. So just throwing that out there, and I'm not pointing fingers, because I know I've been in the same boat myself many times. So thank you for watching. I hope you found this helpful today. Find out, I think the Minor Prophets are some of the least read books in the Bible, but
Absolutely.
there is useful and helpful information in there that still applies to us today, and we are grateful that we're able to access those and just be able to be here to talk about it today. So please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.